By the spirits, the prophecy is true. The Dark Ones return.
The North did not fear war. It feared what was waking beneath the ice. 3 weeks after the rejected Omega became the Luna of Ashenhowl, winter should have begun to fade. The storms should have weakened. The rivers beneath the mountains should have started to break apart beneath the sunlight of early spring. But instead, the snow turned gray. Not white, not silver, gray like ash falling from a dead sky. Lyra Vale woke gasping in the middle of the night, her hand pressed hard against the glowing mark above her heart. Pain burned beneath her skin like something alive was trying to claw its way out of her chest. The mate bond pulsed violently, warning her. Outside the fortress windows, wolves were howling. Not battle howls. Fear. Lyra stumbled from the bed and rushed toward the balcony overlooking the northern valley. Snow spiraled through the darkness below the cliffs while torches flickered across the fortress walls. Ashenhowl warriors were already running through the courtyard in full armor. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then she saw him. Darius Nightbane stood alone at the center of the courtyard beneath the falling gray snow. Motionless. Silent. His golden eyes fixed toward the distant mountains beyond the forest. Dead peaks. The forbidden mountains no wolf crossed. A deep sound echoed across the valley. Not thunder. A growl. Ancient. Massive. Inhuman. The entire fortress seemed to shake beneath it. Lyra's breath caught instantly. Because every wolf in the north knew the stories. 300 years ago, something had been sealed beneath those mountains. Something so dangerous entire packs had vanished trying to destroy it. And according to the old legends, only a Luna carrying the silver mark could awaken it. Suddenly, Darius looked up toward Lyra. For the first time since she met him, the Wolf King looked afraid. Then the war horns began to scream across the north. The war horns did not stop. Their sound rolled across the northern mountains like thunder trapped beneath ice, deep and violent enough to shake the fortress walls. Torches ignited one after another across Ashenhowl territory, while warriors flooded into the courtyard below in perfect formation. Lyra stood frozen on the balcony above them, gray snow swirling around her black cloak. Her heartbeat would not slow down, not after seeing the fear in Darius's eyes. That terrified her most of all. Because monsters did not frighten the Wolf King. And yet when he looked toward dead peaks, something inside him had changed. Another horn echoed through the storm. Closer this time. Darius finally turned away from the mountains and looked upward toward Lyra. His expression hardened instantly, every trace of fear buried beneath cold control. Inside, he ordered. Lyra frowned. What's happening? Darius didn't answer immediately. Below them, Kale barked commands while 50 Ashenhowl warriors armed themselves with silver-edged blades and black iron spears. The fortress was preparing for battle. Then footsteps thundered across the upper corridor behind Lyra. A scout burst onto the balcony, breathing heavily. Snow coated his armor from head to toe. My king, he said sharply, dropping to one knee. Southern riders have crossed the eastern ridge. Darius's jaw tightened. How many? 12 under white banners. The scout hesitated, and Blackfang wolves ride beside them. Lyra's stomach dropped instantly. Ronan. Darius noticed the fear flash across her face immediately. The air around him darkened. Take Luna Lyra to the inner hall, he ordered coldly. No. The word escaped Lyra before she could stop it. Both men looked at her. Lyra swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand straight despite the panic rising inside her chest. I'm done hiding. Silence stretched across the balcony. The scout looked uncomfortable enough to disappear into the snow. Darius stared at Lyra for several long seconds, golden eyes unreadable beneath the stormlight. Then slowly he nodded once. Stay beside me, he said quietly. Not behind me. Beside me. The difference hit Lyra harder than she expected. Together, they descended toward the great hall of Ashenhowl. The massive chamber looked darker than usual beneath the gray snowfall outside. Hundreds of blue fire lanterns flickered against ancient stone walls carved with wolves and battle scars from forgotten wars. Ashenhowl warriors lined both sides of the hall in complete silence as Darius entered. Every wolf lowered their head. Then they lowered them again when Lyra stepped beside him. Respect. Not pity. Not disgust. Respect. The giant fortress doors opened with a deafening groan. Freezing wind exploded into the hall. 12 riders entered slowly beneath white banners marked with the symbol of the Southern Council, a silver moon chained by iron. Lyra instantly hated it. Chains disguised as order. That was all the council had ever been. At the center rode an older man in layered white furs. His hair was pale gray, his eyes sharp and emotionless like frozen steel. Council Elder Marrow, one of the most powerful wolves in the south, and walking beside his horse, Ronan Blackwood. The sight of him hit Lyra like cold water. He looked different now. Thinner. Harder. The bruises Darius left around his throat had faded into dark marks beneath his skin, but his gray eyes burned with something far uglier than anger. Obsession. The moment Ronan saw Lyra standing beside Darius, his expression twisted instantly, like he still couldn't accept she was no longer crawling at his feet. Council Elder Marrow stepped forward first. Darius Nightbane, he announced loudly. By authority of the Southern Council, we demand immediate discussion regarding the silver mark. The entire hall went still. Lyra felt it immediately. The tension. The uncertainty. Some of the younger warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Darius crossed his arms slowly. You crossed northern borders without invitation, he said calmly. Choose your next words carefully. Marrow showed no fear. A dangerous force has awakened in your territory. That makes this council business. Ronan stepped forward beside him. His eyes locked onto Lyra. You should have stayed dead on that lake, he said coldly. A low growl instantly rippled through every Ashen Howl wolf in the room. Darius didn't move, but the torches along the walls flickered violently. Lyra felt the pressure in the air rising. Dangerous. Ancient. Ronan noticed too. Still, he smirked cruelly. She told you what she is yet? He asked Darius mockingly. Or are you still blinded by the mate? Bon. Lyra's chest tightened. Darius's voice dropped lower. Explain. Ronan looked almost satisfied. She carries the same mark as the cursed Luna from 300 years ago. Murmurs spread through the hall immediately. Even Kale's expression darkened slightly. Council Elder Marrow took another step forward. The old records speak clearly, he said. When gray snow falls over the north, the silver Luna awakens the hollow wolves beneath dead peaks. The room turned deathly silent. Lyra frowned weakly. Hollow wolves. Ronan smiled without warmth. You really didn't tell her? Darius ignored him completely. Marrow continued. Centuries ago, an entire northern kingdom burned because of a Luna carrying that mark. His eyes shifted toward Lyra. Thousands died. Lyra instinctively touched the silver bond mark near her heart. Suddenly it felt colder. He's lying, she whispered. But part of her wasn't sure anymore. Ronan saw the uncertainty on her face immediately. And like always, he attacked weakness. That thing on your chest isn't a blessing, he said quietly. It's a curse. The words struck harder than they should have. Because for one horrible moment, Lyra remembered the lake. The blood. The rejection. The feeling that everything around her broke wherever she went. Ronan stepped closer. You think the North loves you now? His voice sharpened. Wait until their children start disappearing. Several warriors visibly stiffened. Fear. Exactly what Ronan wanted. Darius moved then. Just one step. The entire hall shook beneath the force of his alpha aura. Every torch exploded brighter. Ronan immediately stopped talking. Darius's gold eyes glowed unnaturally in the darkness. You speak about my mate, he said softly, as if she belongs beneath your boots. The temperature dropped violently. Frost spread across the stone floor beneath his feet. Ronan forced himself not to back away. She'll destroy your kingdom. No, Darius replied coldly. Cruel men destroy kingdoms. Silence. Absolute silence. Then Council Elder Marrow reached into his cloak and removed an ancient scroll sealed with black wax. The council has voted, he announced. If the Silver Luna remains in Ashen Howl territory, the Southern Pax will consider the North responsible for whatever awakens beneath dead peaks. Kale's hand moved toward his sword instantly. Is that a threat? Marrow never looked away from Darius. It is a warning. Ronan smiled faintly beside him. There's still time to hand her over. That did it. Before anyone could react, Lyra stepped forward. Every eye in the hall snapped toward her. Even Darius looked surprised. Lyra's hands trembled beneath her cloak. But her voice didn't. No, Ronan blinked. Lyra lifted her chin slowly. You don't get to decide what happens to me anymore. The room froze. Ronan's expression darkened instantly. You're still weak, he hissed. Lyra swallowed hard. then answered with the one thing Black Fang Pack never allowed her to have. The truth. Maybe, she whispered. But at least I don't need to break innocent people just to feel strong. Ronan's face twisted with fury. Behind Lyra, something dangerous shifted inside Darius. Not rage. Pride. And for the first time since entering the hall, several Ashen Howl warriors smiled. Hashtag Chapter 2. Lyra decides to fight the Southern Council left before midnight. But their words remained inside the fortress long after the sound of horses disappeared into the storm. Curse. Silver Luna. Hollow Wolves. Lyra could still hear them echoing through the great hall, even hours later. She stood alone beside one of the narrow fortress windows, staring out at the endless mountains buried beneath gray snow. Far below, Ashen Howl warriors patrolled the walls with burning torches, while distant wolf howls drifted through the darkness. The north no longer sounded peaceful. It sounded like something waiting. Behind her, the chamber door opened softly. Lyra didn't turn around. She already knew it was Darius. She could feel him now through the mate bond. Powerful, steady, dangerously calm on the surface. But beneath it, rage. Cold, controlled rage. You should be sleeping, he said quietly. Lyra wrapped her arms tighter around herself. So should you. Darius stopped beside the fireplace, instead of approaching her directly. Flames painted gold across the scars on his throat while shadows flickered behind his glowing eyes. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Lyra whispered the question she'd been terrified to ask since the council arrived. Is it true? The room went silent. Darius didn't pretend not to understand. The Hollow Wolves existed, he answered carefully. Yes. Lyra slowly turned toward him. And the Luna they talked about? Something shifted across Darius's face. Pain. Old pain. She was real too. Lyra's chest tightened. The gray snow outside suddenly felt colder. She destroyed the north? No, the answer came instantly. Sharply. Darius stepped away from the fire now, his heavy boots echoing softly across the stone floor. She was destroyed by it. Lyra frowned. Darius stared toward the flames instead of at her. 300 years ago, the southern packs feared the north growing too powerful. A Luna named Avalini carried the silver mark. His jaw tightened slightly. Just like you. Lyra instinctively touched the glowing bond near her heart. The council called her cursed, Darius continued. They spread fear, turned packs against her, claimed she would awaken monsters beneath dead peaks. And did she? Darius finally looked at her then, golden eyes burning beneath the firelight. She spent years hunted by wolves who should have protected her. The words hit Lyra like ice. Because suddenly, it didn't sound like ancient history anymore. It sounded familiar. She lost everything, Darius said quietly. Her home, her mate, her pack. Lyra felt sick. And when they cornered her beneath dead peaks, his voice lowered. Something ancient answered her pain. Silence swallowed the room. Outside, wind screamed across the mountains. Lyra stared down at her trembling hands. So Ronan was right, she whispered weakly. I really am dangerous. No, the force behind Darius's voice startled her. The Wolf King crossed the room in seconds. Not threatening. Certain. He stopped directly in front of her. You survived cruelty, he said. That does not make you a monster. Lyra looked away quickly. You don't know that. Darius's expression hardened. I know exactly what monsters look like. The room suddenly felt too small beneath the weight of his voice. Lyra swallowed painfully. What if the council's right? She asked. What if I lose control? What if those creatures wake up because of me? Darius's eyes darkened. Then I will stand beside you when they do. The answer shattered something inside her. Not because it was romantic. Because he meant it. No hesitation. No conditions. After a lifetime of people abandoning her the moment, she became inconvenient. Darius spoke like leaving had never crossed his mind. And somehow that terrified her more than loneliness ever had. Hope. Hope was always the cruelest thing. Lyra stepped backward shakily. You shouldn't trust me so easily. Something dangerous flickered behind Darius's eyes. I don't. She blinked in surprise. Darius moved closer slowly. I trust what I've seen. His gaze locked onto hers. A frightened Omega still willing to protect wolves who once feared her. Another step. A woman who apologizes for taking up space because the world punished her for existing. Emotion tightened painfully in Lyra's throat. You don't know how broken I am, she whispered. Darius's expression changed then. Softened. And somehow that hurt even worse. Little wolf, he murmured quietly. Broken things still have teeth. The mate bond pulsed warmly between them. Lyra looked away immediately before he could see tears burning in her eyes. Because part of her wanted to believe him. Part of her wanted to stop running from every kind word like it was a trap waiting to close around her throat. But another part remembered Blackfang too clearly. Kindness always disappeared eventually. Always. A sudden howl echoed outside the fortress walls. Then another. Alarm signals. Darius's expression sharpened instantly. The chamber doors burst open moments later. Kale entered quickly, snow covering his shoulders. My king. What happened? Kale hesitated briefly. Some of the younger warriors are frightened. Lyra froze. Kale glanced toward her carefully. The council's stories spread quickly. There it was. Fear. Exactly like Ronan wanted. Lyra lowered her eyes immediately. Of course. Of course it was happening already. Darius's voice turned lethal. Who spoke against her? No one openly. Kale answered honestly. But they're afraid of the hollow wolves. Lyra stepped backward again. I should leave. Both wolves looked at her instantly. If I stay here, more wolves will get hurt. Darius's face darkened dangerously. No, you heard him, Lyra whispered desperately. The South will blame Ashenhowl for everything now. I said no. Power rolled through the room with enough force to rattle the windows. Lyra flinched instinctively. The second Darius saw it, his expression changed immediately. Regret. Not anger at her. At himself. The alpha aura vanished instantly. Silence followed. Heavy. Painful. Darius exhaled slowly before speaking again, much quieter this time. Look at me. Lyra hesitated, then obeyed. The fury was gone from his face now. Only exhaustion remained. You are not leaving this fortress because frightened wolves tell stories about you. Lyra's voice shook. They won't stop until I'm gone. Then they'll learn. His answer came without hesitation. Kale crossed his arms carefully. With respect, my king, fear spreads faster than truth. Darius nodded once. I know. Then unexpectedly, his eyes shifted toward Lyra again. And that is why she stays. Lyra frowned weakly. What? Darius stepped closer. The South wants you hidden, he said. Ashamed. Silent. His gold eyes narrowed slightly. They want Ashenhowl to see you as weak. Lyra's chest tightened. Because he was right. That was exactly what Ronan always wanted too. Darius continued quietly. So we do the opposite. Kale slowly understood first. His eyes widened slightly. You want her seen? No, Darius corrected. I want her trained. The words hit Lyra like cold water. What? Darius folded his arms. If fear is coming, you learn to face it standing. Lyra stared at him in shock. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. She almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the idea sounded impossible. I don't fight, she whispered. I never could. Darius's expression hardened slightly. That's what Blackfang taught you. Memories flashed instantly. Kane's fists. Warriors laughing. Ronan calling her pathetic. Lyra's breathing became uneven. I'll fail. Darius took one final step forward until only inches separated them. Then carefully, slowly, he lifted one gloved hand beneath her chin. Not forcing, guiding. You survived Blackfang, he said softly. You survived exile. You survived dying on frozen ice. His voice lowered further. And you still think standing back up is beyond you. Emotion crashed violently through her chest. Nobody had ever called survival strength before. Only weakness. Lyra stared into his glowing gold eyes while the storm raged beyond the fortress walls. Then finally, very slowly, she whispered the words that changed everything. Teach me. Something ancient and fiercely protective shifted inside Darius immediately. Not dominance. Not ownership. Pride. The Wolf King lowered his forehead briefly against hers. The gesture felt terrifyingly intimate. Good, he murmured. Outside the chamber windows, gray snow continued falling across the north. But for the first time since the council arrived, Lyra no longer felt like prey. The first lesson hurt more than Lyra expected. Not because Kale struck hard. Because he didn't. The training courtyard of Ashenhowl echoed with steel, boots, and distant wolf howls beneath the gray morning sky. Snow drifted slowly across the stone arena while 50 northern warriors trained in disciplined silence around them. Nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. Nobody looked at Lyra like she was entertainment. And somehow, that terrified her more than mockery ever had. Kale stood across from her holding a wooden practice blade loosely at his side. The scarred warrior looked uncomfortable being gentle, which only made Lyra more nervous. "You're too tense," he said. Lyra tightened her grip around the training knife immediately. "I'm trying not to die." Several nearby warriors snorted quietly at that. Not cruel laughter. Real laughter. Kale sighed heavily. "You're holding the blade like it insulted your family." "I don't know how to hold it." "That," Kale replied dryly, "is painfully obvious." Lyra glared weakly at him. For the first time in years, someone correcting her didn't feel humiliating. Before she could process that thought, Kale moved. Fast. Lyra barely saw the strike coming. The wooden blade tapped her wrist sharply, and the knife flew from her hand instantly. A second later, Kale swept her legs. Lyra crashed into the snow hard enough to lose her breath. Pain exploded across her shoulder. The entire courtyard went silent. Lyra froze instinctively. Her body curled automatically before she could stop it. Arms overhead. Protect ribs. Stay small. Stay quiet. The same survival instincts Black Fang packed had beaten into her for years. Silence stretched above her. Waiting. Waiting for laughter. Waiting for insults. Waiting for someone to call her pathetic. But none came. Instead, Kale crouched beside her. "You alive?" Lyra blinked in confusion. "What?" "I asked if you're alive." "Ah, yes." "Good." Kale stood again and stepped backward. "Then get up." Lyra stared at him. "That's it." Kale frowned. What else would there be? Emotion twisted strangely in her chest. No punishment. No humiliation. No snarling alpha demanding she kneel for embarrassing herself. Just, get up. And here's a question for you listening right now. If the world spent years teaching you to stay down, would you still remember how to stand back up? Slowly, Lyra pushed herself upright again. Her shoulder ached. Her pride hurt worse. Kale tossed the training knife back toward her. She nearly dropped it catching the handle. Again. The next hour became a disaster. Lyra failed every single movement. Too slow. Too hesitant. Too afraid. Every time Kale attacked, her body reacted with panic instead of instinct. She flinched before contact even happened. Sometimes she closed her eyes entirely. And every single time, Kale knocked her into the snow. Again, and again, and again. By the seventh fall, her hands were bleeding through the gloves. By the 10th, her lungs burned painfully from cold air and exhaustion. The courtyard blurred around her. "I can't do this," she whispered. Kale crossed his arms. "Yes, you can." "No, I really can't." "That's fear talking." Lyra laughed bitterly. "No," she said quietly. "That's memory." Something in Kale's expression changed at those words. Before he could answer, a deep voice echoed across the training grounds. "She's done enough." Every warrior immediately straightened. Darius approached through the falling snow dressed entirely in black training leathers. Frost clung to his dark hair, while his heavy cloak shifted behind him like moving shadow. Lyra hated the relief she felt seeing him, because part of her immediately wanted him to rescue her from this. Another part hated herself for wanting that. Kale inclined his head respectfully. "My king." Darius ignored everyone except Lyra. Golden eyes swept across her bruised hands and exhausted posture. "You're shaking." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." Lyra glanced down. Right. Blood stained the snow beneath her gloves. She hadn't even noticed. Darius stepped closer slowly. "Training ends for today." Relief crashed through her so quickly it almost embarrassed her. But before she could move, Kale suddenly spoke. She asked to learn. The courtyard went quiet again. Darius's eyes shifted toward his commander. Kale didn't back down. "You told us yourself," he said calmly. "Ashen Howl wolves don't stop, because pain tells them to." Lyra blinked in surprise. Kale was defending her. Darius looked back at Lyra. The Wolf King's expression remained unreadable for several long seconds. Then he asked softly, "What do you want?" Nobody had ever asked her that before. Not truly. Black Fang ordered. Ashen Howl asked. The difference still felt unreal. Lyra looked down at the training blade in her trembling hand, then toward the warriors surrounding the courtyard. None of them looked impatient. None of them looked disgusted. They were waiting for her answer. Slowly, Lyra tightened her grip on the blade again. "I want," she whispered shakily, "to stop being afraid all the time." Something powerful shifted behind Darius's eyes. Not dominance. Not pity. Respect. The Wolf King stepped backward. "Then continue." Kale smirked faintly. "As you command." The next strike came harder. Lyra managed to block half of it before stumbling sideways. Progress. Tiny. Painful. But real. Kale nodded once. Better. That single word nearly made her cry. Nobody had ever called her better before. Not once in her entire life. Hours passed. Snowfall thickened. The courtyard slowly emptied as other warriors finished training, but Lyra remained. Falling. Standing. Failing. Trying again. Every muscle in her body screamed. Still she kept moving. At one point, she slipped badly on the ice and hit the stone ground hard enough to reopen the bruises along her ribs. Pain exploded through her chest. Lyra curled inward instantly with a sharp gasp. Memory crashed over her before she could stop it. Frozen Lake. Ronin's boot. Blood on ice. Weak wolves deserve this. Her breathing became uneven immediately. No. The courtyard disappeared. Suddenly she was back there again. Cold. Broken. Helpless. A hand touched her shoulder carefully. Lyra flinched violently. Easy. Darius. His voice cut through the panic like warmth through winter. Lyra blinked rapidly. The training grounds slowly returned around her. Darius knelt beside her in the snow. Not touching her anymore. Giving her space. Always giving her space. You're here, he said quietly. Lyra swallowed hard. Humiliation burned across her face. I'm sorry. The words escaped automatically. Darius's expression darkened instantly. What are you apologizing for? I stopped. You panicked. That's weakness. No. Darius said sharply. That's trauma. The word hit her strangely. Nobody in Black Fang Pact had language for pain that wasn't physical. Darius lowered his voice slightly. They hurt you long before they ever touched you. Lyra looked away quickly before he could see tears forming again. Because he was right. And somehow being understood felt unbearably vulnerable. Darius rose slowly and extended one gloved hand toward her. Not commanding. Offering. Lyra stared at it for several seconds. Then carefully took it. The second their skin touched through the gloves, the mate bond pulsed warmly beneath her chest. Steady. Protective. Safe. And here's another question for you. Do you think real strength comes from never falling, or from choosing to rise after every fall? Darius helped her stand. Then unexpectedly, he picked up a training blade himself. The entire courtyard froze. Even Kale looked shocked. My king. Darius ignored him. Golden eyes locked onto Lyra instead. You're learning fear wrong. Lyra frowned weakly. What? Darius stepped into the center of the training circle. Black Fang taught you fear means helplessness. He twirled the wooden blade once. It doesn't. Snow swirled around him violently. Fear means something matters. The pressure around the courtyard shifted instantly. Not alpha dominance. Control. Absolute terrifying control. Darius raised the practice blade toward her. Come at me. Lyra almost laughed. That's not funny. I'm not joking. I can barely fight Kale. You're not fighting to win. Darius's voice softened slightly. You're fighting to stop running. Silence settled between them. Then slowly, Lyra lifted her blade. The warriors around the courtyard watched carefully now. Not because they expected her to win. Because their king had entered the circle himself. Lyra attacked first. Terribly. Darius disarmed her in less than 2 seconds. The blade spun across the snow. Several warriors winced. Lyra groaned softly. I hate this. A faint smirk touched Darius's mouth. Again. She attacked again. Failed again. 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 Each time Darius countered effortlessly. But unlike Black Fang training, he explained, your balance breaks before your strike. Again. You hesitate before committing. Again. You're watching my weapon instead of my shoulders. Slowly. Very slowly. Lyra began improving. Tiny movements. Tiny victories. One successful block. One successful dodge. One strike that actually forced Darius to step sideways. The entire courtyard went silent at that. Darius's eyebrow lifted slightly. Well, he murmured. That was almost dangerous. Lyra stared at him in shock. Then suddenly, she laughed. A real laugh. Breathless. Bright. Completely unplanned. The sound froze the entire courtyard. Because none of the warriors had ever heard it before. Darius stared at her like the world had stopped turning. Lyra realized what she'd done and immediately covered her mouth. But it was too late. Kale grinned openly now. Several warriors exchanged amused looks. And for the first time since arriving in the north, Lyra didn't feel like a broken Omega pretending to belong. She felt like part of the pack. even if only for one fragile, beautiful moment beneath the falling snow. For 3 days after the training courtyard incident, the fortress felt lighter. Not safe. Never safe. But different. Lyra still woke sometimes with her heart racing from nightmares of frozen lakes and shattered mate bonds. She still flinched occasionally when doors slammed too loudly. And every night, gray snow continued falling beyond the fortress walls like ash drifting from a dying world. But something inside her had begun changing. Small things. Dangerous things. Hope. Warriors greeted her openly now when she crossed the halls of Ashenhowl. Servants no longer lowered their heads nervously around her. Even the younger wolves had started watching her training sessions from the upper balconies, whispering excitedly whenever she managed to land a successful strike against Kale. And Darius watched everything. Always silent. Always near. Like a shadow that had decided protecting her was more important than breathing. That morning, Lyra stood inside the training courtyard again, sweat cooling against her skin despite the cold wind. Snow crunched beneath her boots while Kale circled slowly around her with 2 wooden blades resting casually in his hands. "You're thinking too much," he said. "I'm trying not to die. You say that every morning. Because every morning you try to hit me." Kale smirked faintly. "That's how training works." Before Lyra could answer, movement caught her attention above the fortress walls. A raven. Black feathers cut sharply through the gray sky before the bird landed hard on one of the watchtowers. The moment the guards saw the message tied around its leg, their expressions changed instantly. Fear. The atmosphere in the courtyard shifted. Kale noticed too. "What now?" he muttered. A horn echoed across the fortress seconds later. One sharp blast. Not war. Warning. Every warrior stopped moving immediately. Lyra's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Again. A soldier sprinted into the courtyard, breathing hard. "Commander Kale." Kale turned instantly. "What happened?" The young wolf swallowed visibly. "We found a body." Silence crashed down over the training grounds. Lyra felt cold spread through her chest. "Where?" Kale asked. "Southern Patrol route near Frostwood Forest." Darius appeared before anyone saw him arrive. One moment the courtyard stood empty behind Lyra. The next, the Wolf King stood beside her. "How long ago?" "Less than an hour." Darius's jaw hardened immediately. "Who found him?" "Border Scouts." "Take me there." The soldier hesitated briefly before glancing toward Lyra. And that tiny movement alone told her everything. This had something to do with her. Darius noticed too. His expression darkened. "Speak." The young warrior lowered his head immediately. There were marks around the body. Lyra's heartbeat slowed painfully. "What kind of marks?" The soldier looked uncomfortable. "Silver ones." The entire courtyard went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Kale cursed under his breath. Darius's voice turned dangerously calm. No rumors spread beyond this fortress. "Yes, my king." Without another word, Darius turned toward Lyra. "You stay here." "No," the answer came instantly. Darius frowned. "Lyra, if this is about me, then I'm coming. It might not be safe." Anger flashed unexpectedly through her chest. When is anything ever safe? That stopped him. For several seconds, Darius simply stared at her. Then slowly, he nodded once. "Stay beside me." Again those words. Not behind me. Beside me. The journey to Frostwood Forest took less than 30 minutes by wolfback. Gray snow whipped violently through the trees while Ashenhowl warriors moved in perfect silence around them. The deeper they traveled into the forest, the colder the air became. Not natural cold. Dead cold. Lyra felt it immediately. The mate bond beneath her chest pulsed uneasily, warning her. When they reached the clearing, every instinct inside her screamed to stop moving. The body lay half-buried beneath snow near the frozen riverbank. Young. Male. One of the northern scouts. His eyes were still open. Silver. Not glowing. Silver. Like moonlight trapped inside dead flesh. Lyra's breath caught sharply. "No." Kale knelt beside the corpse carefully. "No wounds," he muttered. Darius crouched beside him, studying the snow. The Wolf King's expression turned darker with every second. "There's no blood," another warrior whispered. Lyra forced herself closer despite the nausea twisting violently in her stomach. Then she saw them. Footprints. Large wolf tracks circling the body. But something was wrong. Very wrong. They didn't sink into the snow. The tracks rested on top of the ice like shadows instead of weight. The moment Lyra saw them, pain exploded beneath her mate Mark. She gasped sharply. Darius turned instantly. Lyra. Her hand slammed against her chest. The silver mark burned beneath her skin. Not warmth. Not comfort. Pain. Images flashed violently across her vision. Dark mountains. Red eyes in the snow. Hundreds of wolves moving beneath the ice. Screaming. Lyra stumbled backward with a cry. Darius caught her before she hit the ground. Look at me. She could barely breathe. The tracks, she whispered shakily. Something's wrong with them. Cale rose slowly. My king. Fear spread visibly across the warriors now. One of them stepped backward. Hollow wolves. The words seemed to poison the air itself. Another warrior immediately snarled. Don't say that name. But everyone was already thinking it. Lyra saw it in their faces. The uncertainty. The fear. The exact fear Ronan wanted. Darius rose slowly to his full height. No, the single word cracked across the clearing like thunder. These tracks are staged. Cale frowned. What? Darius pointed toward the snow. Too clean. Too deliberate. His glowing eyes narrowed dangerously. Someone wanted us to find this. Silence. Then suddenly, thunk. A black arrow slammed into the tree beside Lyra's head. Warriors reacted instantly. Steel flashed. Growls exploded through the clearing. Darius pulled Lyra behind him so fast, she barely processed the movement. Show yourself. Cale's roar shook the forest. Nothing answered. Only wind. Only gray snow. Darius ripped the arrow from the tree. A strip of black cloth had been tied beneath the shaft. Black fawn colors. Lyra's blood ran cold. Cale unfolded the attached parchment carefully. His face darkened instantly. What does it say? Darius asked. Cale hesitated, then read aloud. Return the cursed. Luna. The wind howled violently through the forest. Or the north buries its dead next. Silence. Absolute silence. Then Lyra heard it. Not outside. Inside. Whispers. Tiny frightened whispers spreading through the warriors around her. Cursed. Silver Luna. Death follows her. The panic hit her instantly. This was exactly how it started in Black Fawn. Fear first. Cruelty second. Isolation after that. Lyra stepped backward shakily. No. Darius turned immediately. But she was already seeing it. Not the warriors in front of her. Memories. Black fawn wolves staring at her like disease. Ronan calling her weak. The arena chanting out. Her breathing became uneven. This is my fault. No, Darius's voice cut through the panic sharply. But it is, Lyra whispered. The council came because of me. The threats are because of me. Now wolves are dying because of me. Enough. The force behind Darius's voice stunned the entire clearing silent. The Wolf King stepped toward her slowly. Not angry at her. Angry for her. His gold eyes burned beneath the falling snow. You did not kill this wolf. Lyra looked away painfully. But they think. I don't care what frightened fools think. The mate bond pulsed fiercely between them. Protective. Possessive. Terrifyingly steady. Darius lowered his voice slightly. Ronan wants fear spreading through Ashenhowl. His jaw tightened. He wants you isolated. Another step closer. I will not allow that. Lyra's throat tightened painfully. Because she wanted to believe him. But fear had poisoned entire packs before. She knew that better than anyone. Then unexpectedly, Cale stepped forward. The commander planted his sword into the snow beside the dead scout. Ashenhowl protects its own, he said firmly. Several warriors immediately struck fists against their armor in agreement. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to make Lyra's chest ache. One younger warrior still looked uncertain. Darius noticed instantly. The temperature in the clearing dropped. If any wolf here fears her more than the enemy hunting us, he said quietly, leave now. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Because beneath the fury in his voice, there was truth. The real monster wasn't standing beside them trembling in the snow. It was hiding somewhere beyond the forest, smiling while packs turned against each other again. Darius looked toward the dark trees. Then slowly, his eyes shifted north, toward dead peaks. The Wolf King's expression hardened into something ancient, something dangerous. Ronan is not working alone, he said quietly. Cale frowned. What do you mean? Darius stared into the storm. The hollow wolves were never just a story. The wind suddenly died. Every warrior froze. And somewhere deep beneath the mountains, something growled back. Hashtag Chapter 5. The secret under dead peaks. Nobody spoke during the ride back to the fortress. Not Lyra. Not Kale. Not even the warriors surrounding them. The dead scout's body traveled behind the group, wrapped carefully in black northern cloth, while gray snow swallowed the mountain trails beneath their wolves' paws. Wind screamed through the trees like distant voices, and every few minutes Lyra caught warriors glancing nervously toward the northern horizon, toward dead peaks. The mate bond beneath her chest still burned faintly. Not pain anymore. Recognition. That frightened her most. By the time they returned to Ashenhowl Fortress, night had fallen completely across the mountains. Blue fire lanterns flickered along the fortress walls while armed guards doubled patrol routes above the gates. The North was preparing for war. Darius dismounted first. Kale, he ordered quietly, increase watch rotations. Nobody travels alone beyond the inner forest. Kale nodded immediately. And the council? Darius's eyes darkened. They'll hear about the body by sunrise. His jaw tightened slightly, which means Ronan wants panic spreading before we can respond. Lyra wrapped her cloak tighter around herself. Everything felt wrong now. The fortress that once felt warm suddenly carried tension beneath every hallway and torch flame. Wolves spoke in quieter voices. Servants moved faster. Even the children playing near the lower corridors had disappeared. Fear was spreading. Exactly like before. Exactly like Blackfawn. Darius looked toward Lyra instantly, as if sensing the direction of her thoughts through the bond. Come with me. She frowned weakly. Where? Instead of answering, the Wolf King turned toward the oldest section of the fortress, a massive stone tower built directly into the mountain itself. The Forbidden Archives. Lyra had heard whispers about it from younger warriors during meals. Ancient maps. Old wars. Creatures nobody discussed openly. And beneath it, tunnels leading toward dead peaks. Two guards immediately lowered their heads as Darius approached the enormous iron doors. My king. Open it. The gates groaned heavily apart. Cold air rushed outward instantly. Not winter cold. Ancient cold. The kind buried beneath deep earth and forgotten graves. Lyra hesitated at the entrance. Darius noticed immediately. You don't have to come. Yes, she whispered quietly. I do. Because if the North feared her, then she needed to understand why. They descended deep beneath the fortress through narrow torchlit stairways carved directly into black stone. The farther down they traveled, the quieter the world became. No wind. No wolves. Only footsteps echoing through darkness. Finally, the corridor opened into an enormous underground chamber. Lyra stopped breathing. Shelves taller than fortress walls stretched endlessly into shadow, filled with ancient books bound in cracked leather and wolf hide. Massive skulls from creatures she didn't recognize hung, suspended from iron chains above them. Old battle banners covered the stone walls, stained dark with age and blood. At the center of the chamber stood a giant map carved into obsidian stone. The North. Dead peaks rose near its center like jagged teeth cutting across the mountains. Darius approached the map slowly. This place existed before Ashenhowl, he said quietly. Lyra stepped beside him carefully. How old is it? Older than the Southern Councils. A faint bitterness entered his voice. Older than most kingdoms. The Wolf King rested one hand against the stone surface. Everything the South calls myth began here. Lyra's eyes moved toward dead peaks carved into the map. What really happened beneath those mountains? For several seconds, Darius said nothing. Then finally, the hollow. Wolves were once real wolves. Lyra froze. What? Golden firelight flickered across Darius's scarred face as he stared down at the map. Centuries ago, the North fought a war against creatures that came from beneath the ice beyond dead peaks. His jaw tightened. Not wolves. Something older. Lyra felt cold spread slowly through her stomach. The northern packs were losing. Entire territories vanished within weeks. His voice lowered slightly. Then a king made a choice. Darius pointed toward the mountain range. He bound the souls of his warriors to the mountains themselves. Lyra stared at him in horror. No, they became stronger. Faster. Impossible to kill. His eyes darkened. But they stopped being wolves. Silence swallowed the chamber. The torches suddenly felt dimmer. They lost themselves, Lyra whispered. Yes. Darius finally looked toward her. Hunger replaced loyalty. Rage replaced reason. Another pause. And eventually the North sealed them beneath dead peaks. The mate bond pulsed painfully again. Lyra pressed her hand against her chest instinctively. Why does the silver mark matter? Darius's expression shifted immediately. That question mattered. A silver luna can strengthen the prison beneath the mountains. His voice grew quieter. Or break it. Lyra stepped backward slightly. So the council was right. No. The word cracked sharply through the chamber. Darius moved toward her slowly. They tell half-truths because fear is easier to control than understanding. His gold eyes burned intensely now. The last silver luna did not destroy the north. But you said she awakened them. Because they murdered her mate. Silence. Absolute silence. Lyra stared at him. Darius's voice lowered further. The South hunted her for years. Turned packs against her. Called her cursed. Dangerous. Monstrous. His jaw clenched visibly. When they finally cornered her beneath dead peaks, they slaughtered the wolf she loved in front of her. Pain crossed Darius's face briefly. Old pain. The kind that never truly healed. And when her grief shattered control, he continued quietly. The prison weakened. Lyra felt sick. Not because of the story. Because it sounded too familiar. Rejected. Hunted. Feared. Ronan's face flashed through her mind instantly. You think they're doing it again? She whispered. Darius didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. The truth already lived inside his eyes. A low growl suddenly echoed somewhere deep beneath the chamber floor. Lyra froze instantly. What was that? Darius's expression darkened. The mountain. Another sound followed. Faint. Distant. Like claws dragging slowly across stone. Lyra's blood turned to ice. They're alive. Sleeping, Darius corrected carefully. That doesn't make me feel better. Unexpectedly, the corner of Darius's mouth twitched slightly. Almost a smile. Almost. Then his expression turned serious again. There's something else you need to know. The tone of his voice made Lyra tense immediately. Darius stepped closer to the obsidian map. Only two beings can fully control the prison beneath dead peaks. His glowing eyes lifted toward hers. The Wolf King, the mate bond pulsed. And his silver luna. The chamber went completely silent. Lyra stared at him. No, yes. That's impossible. Darius's gaze softened slightly. Nothing about us was supposed to happen. Emotion tightened painfully inside her chest. The bond between them suddenly felt heavier now. Larger than love. Larger than fate. Responsibility. Danger. Lyra looked away quickly. This is why the council fears me. No. Darius said quietly. She frowned. Then why? The Wolf King stepped directly in front of her now. Because for the first time since entering the chamber, he looked angry. Not at her. At the world. Because frightened men fear powerful women more than monsters. The words hit her harder than anything else that night. Darius lifted one hand slowly toward her face. This time, Lyra didn't flinch. His fingers brushed gently against her cheek. Warm. Careful. You are not a curse, little wolf, he murmured softly. The mate bond glowed silver between them. Steady. Alive. Then suddenly, a scream echoed through the fortress above them. Both wolves froze instantly. Another scream followed. This time louder. Closer. Darius's expression changed immediately. Predatory. Dangerous. The Wolf King turned toward the stairway leading upward. And somewhere far above them, war horns began screaming across Ashenhowl again. Chapter 6. Ronan's true plan. The fortress erupted into chaos. War horns screamed through Ashenhowl, while wolves sprinted across the upper corridors in full armor. Torches blazed violently against the stone walls as the sound of snarling echoed somewhere above them. Darius moved instantly. 1 second, he stood beside Lyra inside the ancient archive. The next, he was already climbing the staircase toward the fortress levels above with terrifying speed. Stay behind me, he ordered sharply. Lyra followed anyway. By the time they reached the main courtyard, snow and panic filled the night air. Warriors surrounded one of the outer gates with weapons drawn, while several guards held a struggling figure against the frozen stone ground. A spy. The wolf wore torn black clothing stained with blood and ash. One side of his face had been clawed open recently, but Lyra recognized the black insignia burned into the leather around his arm immediately. Black Fawn. Kale stood over the prisoner with a silver blade pressed against his throat. He slipped through the eastern wall tunnels, the commander growled. Almost reached the lower armory before the scouts caught him. The spy laughed weakly through bloody teeth. You're already too late. Darius descended the staircase into the courtyard slowly. The atmosphere changed immediately. Every wolf stepped aside. Fear rolled through the air as the Wolf King approached. "What did you bring into my fortress?" Darius asked quietly. The prisoner spat blood onto the snow. "A message." Cale pressed the blade harder. "Careful." The spy only grinned wider. Then his eyes shifted toward Lyra. And suddenly, the smile became cruel. "There she is." Lyra felt cold slide down her spine. "Ronan says hello, little Omega." A dangerous growl rippled through the courtyard instantly. Darius stopped moving. That was somehow worse. Because silence from him meant violence was close. The spy laughed again despite the blade at his throat. "He still talks about you constantly, you know." Blood stained his teeth red. "Can't sleep. Can't eat. Barely thinks about anything except getting you back." Lyra's stomach twisted painfully. "Obsessed. Not grieving. Not regretful. Obsessed." Darius's gold eyes darkened into something lethal. "What message?" The spy slowly reached inside his coat. Cale immediately grabbed his wrist. But the prisoner only pulled free a folded piece of black parchment marked with silver wax. "Ronan's seal." Cale handed it carefully toward Darius. The Wolf King opened the message silently. The moment he read it, something terrifying changed in his face. Lyra felt the mate bond pulse violently. Rage. Pure rage. "What is it?" Cale asked carefully. Darius said nothing. Instead, he handed the parchment toward him. Cale read it once, then cursed viciously. Lyra stepped closer despite herself. "What did he say?" Nobody answered immediately, which frightened her more. Finally, Darius looked toward her. "Ronan has entered Dead Peaks." The courtyard went silent. Even the wind seemed to die. Lyra blinked slowly. No, Cale's expression looked grim now. "Our scouts thought the southern wolves were still camped beyond Frostwood." "They were," Darius said coldly. "This is a smaller group." The spy laughed again. "Your Blackfang Alpha stopped caring about councils weeks ago." His eyes gleamed strangely. "He wants power now." A horrible feeling spread through Lyra's chest. What did he do? The spy turned toward her fully. And for the first time, fear flickered behind his expression too. He went beneath the mountains. Silence. Absolute silence. Darius stepped forward slowly. What exactly did Ronan awaken? The prisoner swallowed visibly, then whispered, "The Hollow King." Several warriors flinched immediately. Cale grabbed the spy by the throat. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Darius's expression became unreadable, which somehow felt worse than anger. Lyra looked between them desperately. "What is the Hollow King?" Nobody answered immediately. Then the spy started laughing again. Broken laughter this time. He thought he could control it. The prisoner muttered. "That's the funny part." Darius's eyes narrowed sharply. "Explain." The spy's smile twitched unnaturally. Ronan found the old shrine beneath Dead Peaks. Blood trickled slowly from the corner of his mouth now. The one sealed after the last Silver Luna died. Cale's grip tightened, and the spy looked toward Lyra again. "He used her blood." Lyra froze completely. "What?" Darius moved so fast nobody saw it happen. 1 second the spy knelt in the snow. The next, the Wolf King held him suspended several feet above the ground by his throat. The courtyard cracked beneath the pressure of Darius's alpha aura. "How?" The roar shook the fortress walls. The spy choked weakly. "El Lake." Lyra's blood ran cold instantly. The frozen lake. Ronan. The beating. Her blood on the ice. Darius realized it at the same moment she did. Something monstrous flashed behind his glowing eyes. "He collected it," Lyra whispered. The spy laughed weakly again despite choking. "Ronan said if the North worships the Silver Luna," his voice cracked painfully, "then he'll become the monster strong enough to kill her." Horror spread visibly across the courtyard. Cale stepped backward. "He's insane." "No," Darius said quietly. The Wolf King's voice had become frighteningly calm now. "He's desperate." The mate bond pulsed sharply again. Lyra suddenly understood something terrible. Ronan never cared about the curse. Never cared about protecting the packs. Never cared about laws. He cared about losing. Losing her. Losing control. Losing the power he believed belonged to him. And now he was willing to wake ancient horrors just to take it back. The spy's body suddenly convulsed violently. Cale frowned. What's wrong with him? Black veins spread rapidly beneath the prisoner's skin. Lyra stumbled backward instinctively. The spy started laughing again, then screaming. His eyes turned silver. Not pale. glowing. "Oh gods," Kale whispered. The prisoner's bones cracked sharply beneath his skin. His mouth stretched unnaturally wide as dark frost spread across the snow beneath him. Darius immediately threw him away from the others. "Move." The spy hit the courtyard hard, then stopped moving completely. Silence followed. 1 second. 2. Then slowly, the corpse stood back up. Several warriors raised weapons instantly. The thing, wearing the spy's body, tilted its head unnaturally toward Lyra. Its silver eyes glowed inhumanly bright. And when it spoke, the voice did not belong to a wolf anymore. She opened the door. Every torch in the courtyard exploded out simultaneously. Darkness swallowed Ashen Howl whole. Then the creature smiled. And somewhere deep beneath Dead Peaks, something ancient finally woke up. The creature's ashes had not even settled before the entire fortress began shaking. A deep rumble rolled beneath Ashen Howl, like something enormous moving under the mountains themselves. Dust drifted from the stone walls. Torches flickered violently across the courtyard, while distant wolf howls erupted through the northern forests. Not hunting calls. Warnings. Darius slowly lowered his hand after destroying the creature wearing the spy's body. Black ash scattered across the snow around his boots, while gray wind screamed through the fortress towers. Nobody spoke, because every wolf standing there felt it now. Something ancient had awakened. Kale stepped toward the remains carefully, sword still raised. What in the gods was that thing? Darius's glowing eyes remained fixed toward Dead Peaks. A messenger. Lyra's stomach tightened painfully. The mate bond beneath her chest pulsed harder than ever before, almost like another heartbeat beneath her skin. Fear rolled through her in violent waves, but mixed beneath it was something worse. Recognition. The thing had looked at her like it knew her, like it had been waiting for her. A sudden scream echoed from the eastern wall. Then another. Kale spun instantly. Report. One of the guards stumbled into the courtyard, breathing hard, snow covering his armor. "My king," his voice shook. "You need to see this." Darius moved immediately. Lyra followed without hesitation. Nobody tried stopping her anymore. They climbed the eastern watchtower as freezing wind tore through the fortress. The higher they went, the colder the air became until even breathing hurt. Then they reached the wall, and Lyra froze. The forest below Ashen Howl was glowing. Thousands of silver eyes moved slowly between the trees beneath the blizzard. Endless shadows crawled through the snow-covered wilderness, too silent to be living wolves. The hollow wolves. There were hundreds, maybe thousands. Some moved on 4 legs. Others dragged twisted bodies through the snow unnaturally. A few stood completely still beneath the trees, staring directly toward the fortress with glowing dead eyes. The younger guards looked terrified. One quietly whispered a prayer beneath his breath. Kale's face hardened. "They're surrounding the mountain." Darius said nothing, which frightened Lyra more than if he had shouted, because the Wolf King only became silent when he was preparing for war. Far beyond the forest line, movement appeared through the storm. A group of riders. Black banners. Black Fong. Lyra's blood turned cold instantly. Ronan rode at the center of them. Even from this distance, something looked horribly wrong about him now. Silver light pulsed faintly beneath his skin, while dark veins crawled up his throat, like cracks spreading through ice. And behind him, something massive moved beneath the snowstorm. Not fully visible. Too large. Every time lightning flashed through the clouds above Dead Peaks, Lyra caught glimpses of enormous shapes moving beneath the mountain fog. Watching. Waiting. Darius's jaw tightened visibly. He opened the lower gates. Kale looked toward him sharply. "You mean the prison?" The Wolf King nodded once. Silence followed. Then suddenly, one of the younger warriors lost control. "This is because of her." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Instant regret flooded his face. Too late. The entire wall fell silent instantly. Lyra felt the accusation hit, like a blade beneath her ribs. Again. Always again. Fear twisted violently through her chest, as old memories rushed back like blood through broken ice. Black Fong warriors staring at her with disgust. Children laughing while she knelt in snow. Ronan calling her weak. Dangerous. Worthless. Her breathing became uneven. Darius turned slowly toward the young warrior. The temperature dropped instantly. Frost exploded across the stone wall beneath his boots. The young guard paled immediately. "And my king, I didn't mean..." "No," Darius interrupted softly. "You meant every word." The pressure in the air became suffocating. Several wolves stepped backward instinctively. Lyra felt the rage pouring through the mate bond now. Ancient. Wild. The same terrifying force that destroyed the creature in the courtyard minutes earlier. The shadows behind Darius began moving unnaturally again. Kale noticed immediately. My king. But Darius kept staring at the terrified warrior. You look at her, he said quietly, and see a curse because fear is easier than courage. Another crack spread through the frozen stone wall. The young wolf nearly collapsed. Lyra realized with horror that Darius was seconds away from tearing the entire fortress apart. Not because of war. Because someone hurt her. She moved before thinking. Darius. The Wolf King didn't react. The storm around the wall intensified violently. Silver eyes glowed brighter beneath the forest below. Darius. This time Lyra stepped directly in front of him. The moment she touched his arm, everything stopped. The shadows vanished instantly. The freezing pressure crushing the wall disappeared. Even the wind weakened slightly. Darius looked down at her. For one terrifying second, his glowing eyes barely looked human. Then the mate bond pulsed. Warmth spread between them. And slowly, the monster inside the Wolf King calmed. Lyra swallowed hard before turning toward the frightened warrior. He's scared, she whispered quietly. The young wolf stared at her in shock. Lyra forced herself to keep speaking despite her shaking hands. I would be too. Silence spread across the wall. Then unexpectedly, Kale stepped forward and struck his fist against his armor. Ashenhowl protects its own. Another warrior repeated the motion. Then another. Then another. Until every wolf on the wall stood united beneath the storm. Not because they weren't afraid. Because they chose each other anyway. Emotion tightened painfully inside Lyra's chest. For the first time in her life, fear wasn't turning wolves against her. It was bringing them together. Darius's gaze softened almost invisibly as he looked at her. Then slowly, the Wolf King drew the massive black blade from across his back. The sound of steel, sliding free, echoed across the mountain like a death sentence. Below them, the hollow wolves began howling together. Thousands of voices. One scream. And somewhere deep inside Dead Peaks, something screamed back. #ending cliffhanger. The howl beneath Dead Peaks did not sound like a wolf. It sounded older. Bigger. Wrong. The entire mountain range trembled violently as cracks spread across the frozen cliffs in glowing lines of silver light. Snow collapsed from the peaks in massive waves while Ashenhowl warriors staggered across the fortress walls trying to keep their balance. Below them, the hollow wolves suddenly stopped moving. Every single one. Thousands of silver eyes slowly lifted toward the mountains behind them. Waiting. Listening. Then Ronan laughed. The sound echoed unnaturally across the valley as dark frost spread beneath his horse's feet. He raised one hand slowly toward the shattered mountains. And the ground exploded. A massive claw burst through the ice beneath Dead Peaks. Stone shattered instantly. Several wolves on the fortress walls gasped in horror. The claw was enormous. Blackened bone wrapped in silver frost, large enough to crush entire houses beneath it. Then came the second claw, and the scream that followed nearly drove Lyra to her knees. The mate bond exploded painfully inside her chest as ancient power surged through the air like wildfire. Visions flashed violently across her mind. Blood, fire, mountains collapsing, a silver-marked Luna crying beside the body of a dead king. Lyra gasped sharply. Darius caught her before she fell. Lyra. But she could barely hear him. Because something beneath the mountain had just spoken inside her head. Mine. Her blood turned ice cold. Far below, Ronan slowly lifted his glowing silver eyes toward the fortress. Toward her. And smiled. You feel it now, don't you? His voice thundered across the north. The Hollow King knows your scent. Then the mountain split open completely. And something enormous began crawling out of the darkness beneath the world. And standing above the collapsing mountains, Lyra finally realized the terrifying truth. She was never meant to live a quiet life. Not after surviving Black Fawn. Not after being chosen by the Wolf King. And definitely not after the Hollow King learned her name. Beside her, Darius tightened his grip around the black blade, while gray snow swallowed the north beneath endless storm clouds. Behind them, 50 wolves stood ready to die for their Luna. Ahead of them waited monsters older than kingdoms. And somewhere between love and war, Lyra would have to decide what kind of queen she wanted to become. The broken Omega who spent her life running? Or the silver Luna powerful enough to shake the mountains themselves? So tell me, if you were Lyra, would you still fight for a world that once treated you like nothing? Comment Queen of the North if you want part 3.